Welcome to VCs Off the Record. This is Real Talk with Real Investors. Your host, Gayle Jennings-O'Byrne, CEO of Wocstar Capital and co-founder of the Wocstar Fund, has spent 30 years in finance. And I'm here too. I'm Victoria Bird. I'm the Chief Content Officer and Creative Director of Wocstar Media. And I've spent 30 years in media. We champion female entrepreneurs. We champion diverse teams, and we're both passionate about stories that change old narratives. We're looking to inform you, inspire you, and help you get your bag and your dreams.
Hi, welcome to VCs Off the Record. I'm your host, Gayle Jennings-O'Byrne, the CEO of Wocstar Capital and the co-founder of Wocstar Fund. And I'm here today with Victoria Burt, who is the Chief Content Officer at Wocstar Capital and the Creative Director of Wocstar Media. Hey, lady.
Hey, lady. How are you?
I'm fabulous. This show gives me such joy every time it's on the calendar and I know we're coming in the studio.
Well, this show gives me education because every time I hear our VCs talk, hear you talk, I learn things that I didn't know. And I know today's show is a really interesting one because we started talking about doing this show a few months ago when we were planning out this third season.
Yeah.
And it's really about something that I know is big in my life, the idea of like, how do you deal with rejection? How do you deal with the no's? And yeah, it's a lot, right? And you said two really amazing things. So I wanted to talk about that today with you. And I want to talk about how you as a VC give no's, tell people no, and how you yourself deal with getting the big no's, right?
Yeah.
So when was the last, I know the answer, but it's okay, tell the people. When was the last time you had sort of a significant no that really you had to like deal with and process?
I love that you said significant no, and I can tell you it was a $3 million no that then turned into a $5 million no. So that was a couple of months ago. We had been talking with a large West Coast-ish bank, and for a couple of years, we had been talking to them, and we had got to the point where they had let us know that they were gonna put about $3 million into the Wocstar Fund. And I was excited. This was money that was going to be able to be invested in women of color and diverse tech teams. And so we're really excited to have them as LPs, limited partners in our fund, because they're just a great organization. And it was real capital. I mean, we would be able to write some real meaningful, sizable checks to entrepreneurs. And then a Friday came and we got the call. And I think the thing that hurt the most about it was that there wasn't a really good reason why they said no. And I think if we had a real clarity of why, I think it wouldn't have stung as much. And listen, I cried, had a little wine, curled up in a ball. Repeat, cried, had a little more wine, curled up a little more. But I let myself go through that, that hurt, that sting, that zing. But the other thing that happened, and it kind of surprised me, was when it happened and we were being told no, I started to see the person on the other side of that message. And I saw the human that they were. And I got into the space of like, this can't be easy for them either. Like, they don't wake up every day to not give and not write checks and invest in really good stuff. They get up to do that. They get up to invest and allocate capital. So I got to a place of seeing how this was a difficult conversation for them and had real empathy for them. And I'm actually kind of proud of myself because I could have been in my feelings and this bullshit. But yeah, something made me see the person on the other side of it. But it still stung. And like I said, that weekend was, a lot of Sauvignon Blanc and Kleenex tissues and the whole lot. But I will say this, is that we're going to see a lot of no's. You're going to hear a lot of no's. And so we just got to put our big girl pants on and be okay with it. It's not personal. It's not about me. These are business decisions. And for every no, I know that there's a yes somewhere around the corner. I would just say for all the people listening is if you're in a position of giving yeses or nos, do so quickly and do so with some information behind it so that people can grow from it, learn from it, and move on from it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I have a thing in my life that I really try to be very clear about when I'm saying no to somebody. And if I'm getting a no, I really need to understand some part of why. And I call it like the silent no. I want to, like, it's okay. I can deal with it. I've gotten to a point where I think rejection is sometimes can be protection or at least redirection.
That's
right?
right. That's right.
So,
yeah, we even, when we started the fund, I said to the team, I said, when we give a no, I want you to give 3 reasons why, and I want you to give 3 things they could do better or different. And I know at first the team was like, what? Like, we just can't call and tell them it's a no. And the first time we did it, I had, the associate on my team write it up. And then we got on the phone with the entrepreneur. And they called me back later and they said, thank you so much. They're like, no one's ever done that. No VC has done that. Like, we just get a no and it's just a no. And like, even though I didn't get a check from you, like, I just have a lot of respect for you. And he was like, I'm just calling to let you know that. And I thought, wow, that's why Wocstar exists. Like, it's about cutting checks, but it's also about supporting entrepreneurs. And part of how you support them is, tell them
the truth.
The truth.
The truth. Yeah.
The
cutting
truth.
checks and cutting teeth. Yeah. It's like you're teaching them maybe how they can do it better the next time.
That's right.
Right. And like, like you said with the associate that had to say the no, I think a lot of people don't want to give the reason to have the dialogue because it is difficult to tell somebody no, especially if you know their dreams or their hopes for a future or a business are being dashed in that particular moment.
Yeah. There's a really good book called Difficult Conversations. I think everyone should read it because at some point in our lives, we're going to have a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
And we're typically not armed with how to do so.
Can you turn a no into a yes? Can you do it in the moment?
Well, one, I try not to ask yes, no questions.
Okay.
And I think for entrepreneurs, that's another really good lesson to learn. Not to ask a yes, no question, but ask one that has opportunity connected to it, and then be willing to just listen to the response. Have you ever talked to a girlfriend and she's like, yeah, so I told my man da 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 da, and then I always say
yes.
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 And I go, so what'd he say? And most people forget what the other person said, that they remember what they said. And then I told him and da da da, right? And I go, but what'd they say? Because we don't stop and listen to the other side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we have an amazing VC coming up. I'm gonna leave it there, but he calls himself
the Human AI Interface.
I'm all interested. I'm all in.
Is that not fabulous?
I'm all in, and he's writing checks. He's currently writing checks.
Big checks.
Yeah, big checks. This episode of VCs Off the Record is brought to you by Wocstar Ghetto Film School Entrepreneurial Academy.
Hi, so my guest today is Jesse Middleton, general partner at Flybridge, the Human AI Interface, but also a father of how many?
Two now. I have an 8-year-old and now a 10-month-old. So I hit reset. I got this advice years ago that was, if you're going to have a second kid, don't get rid of the diaper bag. Like, don't wait that long. And I did not listen to it, obviously.
That was good advice. So anyone listening, take that advice. But listen, you are also a investor, a mentor. You're a technology evangelist, I think I can say. You're a life hacker. Like, what else are you? Tell me 3 things people should know about you.
3 things people should know about me.
Because I suck at intros, so you do your intro.
All good. I am a life hacker. I was a hacker. I actually got suspended from high school for computer hacking.
What? Are you on some like FBI list somewhere?
I am not.
That would be kind of cool.
Well, I mean, I may be on a list at this point, but I did actually help then the entire school district clear out the NIMDA virus after, which is actually how I wound up getting, partially how I got into college, as my school superintendent wrote me a recommendation letter for that. So I was a hacker.
Love.
My parents said, please do something with that won't land you in jail. I am a father, as you noted, of two. I'm a husband. My wife also works in venture capital. She runs another fund here in New York.
Okay, we're going to have her on the show.
She's very special.
You guys are like the VC power couple. This is cool.
She is smarter than I am. So I'm like, I pay attention to what she's doing, follow along. And you know, I would say the two other things for me is I grew up on the water a lot. So I grew up in a very tiny town, but my grandparents were sailors. And so I learned to like follow a compass, follow the sun, actually sail. And so I enjoy being on the water. Wow. So that is something that some people know.
I love it. What body of water are we talking?
They were on the Chesapeake Bay. But up until my grandfather, we just celebrated his 90th birthday, my grandmother's 85th birthday, and their 65th wedding anniversary. But up until my grandfather was about 81 or 82, they would sail on their own from the Chesapeake Bay down around the tip of Florida to the Gulf of Mexico every year for the winter and come back. And so I aspire to do that when I am 80 or 85 years old as well.
Well, listen, we can do it before then if you want. I learned to sail a few years ago. And I got to say, the thing I love most about it is I just forget everything else. Like when you're on the water, I mean, half the time I'm just trying to figure out where the wind is to figure out what, but it's kind of like biking. I can just forget everything and I just have to concentrate on the bike or the sailing.
Totally. The other thing is I wound up drawing a lot of parallels to like parenthood and startups. And I would also draw it to sailing where there's only so much that's within your control. There's a lot of externality to it. You know, I think about that scene in Tommy Boy back in the day where he's sitting on the boat and there's no wind. He's like, Dad, can you help me out here? You know, and I think it's, I think, you know, there's only so much. You can steer the rudder, but you got no wind in your sails. You know, you got to tack, got to figure something else out.
Figure it out. I love it. Okay. So you just gave me a film to watch or a movie to watch this weekend, Tommy Boy. Hey, I want to thank you for being on today.
Thank you for having me.
You know, there's so much conversation about access to capital or lack of access to capital and trying to find out who the VC guys and gals are and who's investing, who's not. And so it was really because of that we started this podcast, VCs Off the Record, because we wanted people to have a way to hear from folks like you that are writing checks, that are investing, that are looking at, you know, entrepreneurs. And so thank you for being on, because this is kind of a give back, right? This is how we let entrepreneurs know that we're out here. So we're going to do sort of a reverse pitch. You get to pitch to entrepreneurs. Tell us what you look at, what you're excited about investing in. Yeah.
So I'm an early stage investor. So when we think about early stage, we think about sort of pre-seed on up through seed and Series A. But we're a very focused investment fund. So my partners started their firm originally in 2008. I joined them in 2016. I had spent 6 years on the founding team of WeWork, where I built that from when we were about 4 people to almost 4,000 employees. And one of the things that drew me to how my partners invested at Flybridge is that they really leaned into the community aspect of it. We today have 381 active portfolio companies in the funds, and we bring them together multiple times a year to effectively let them engage predominantly with each other, experts in our network, but really to help each other out. And so I think one of the things that we wind up looking for in founders these are founders who have this unique ability. We call it the Pied Piper effect. This is not the startup Silicon Valley TV show Pied Piper, although that would be funny too. This is really the children's fable, the sort of Pied Piper leading the children along. And the idea that the best founders, it doesn't matter what you're building, doesn't matter what category you're in, they have this unique ability to bring people, I was going to say drag people along with them, to bring people along with them by choice, but irrationally early.
Yeah.
So that's investors, employees, customers. I have a founder recently who hired a guy 12 years at Google, making all in over $1 million a year in comp there, to a startup that's only raised a couple $1 million that's paying him, I think, like $70,000. And so for me, that is a huge thing that we look for in founders. And one of the interesting things I would note about that is that you can get that from a lot of places in life. That could come from your family, your upbringing, that ability to bring people along. Sure. You may have learned it in college. You may have picked it up in a first job. And so it's not like you have to come from a specific background. I'm not necessarily worried if you worked at Meta or Google. That's not it. And so I think for me, that's sort of one of the flags that we look for in founders.
I love that. I love that, because what you're really saying then is it's about the person and who they can draw around them.
Yeah, look, this is off the record and not being recorded, right? So
Absolutely.
I'll tell you that
Absolutely.
I have the opinion that the vast majority of an early stage investor's job is picking the people that are going to win.
Yeah.
We are all value add. We all want to offer support and guidance and help. And frankly, I might be able to help you once or twice on your journey over a decade. But the best winners, they were going to be winners no matter what.
That's right. That's
They're
right.
going to figure it out. And one of the things they're capable of doing is bringing the best people along. So I can help you. I can make intros. But if you can't sell that amazing engineer, that amazing marketing hire, or sell that amazing investor that's going to bring you a lot more capital to build, I'm not going to get you there, frankly.
Yeah. And you're nicer about it. You called it the Pied Piper effect. I kind of think of it like in war. Like, are you going to like scale that mountain or, go over that hill with your sergeant? Are you that person that's going to like, follow up that mountain with them? And there's something in that too, that like, particularly even for like, if you're young, if you're of color, if you're an immigrant, right? And like, you can get that like senior executive that you were talking about from Google to come. Like that says a lot about you, what you're building, your vision, how you can attract people to it. So I love that. We can't leave the human AI interface lead in without talking about that.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Where does that come from?
Yeah. So, I mean, historically as a firm, we've invested in very technical founders. So our couple of our largest successes have been companies like Crashlytics that Twitter acquired, or Firebase, which is now Google Developer Cloud. And here in New York City, actually in our backyard, MongoDB is a company that we seeded, and my partnership is still on the board there to this day. It's a public company. There's a funny aside to that business. They're a database company, and back when we did the seed round, now 15 years ago, the estimate that we had internally in our memos that the entire database market, by 2030 would be sort of $30 billion. There was a moment in time only a few months ago where Mongo was worth $30 billion, and they're not the only game in the market. So we're wrong a lot. Fortunately, in this case, we were wrong in the right way. And it was a great return for us. But we've sort of translated this deeply technical founder focus into this next generation of people leaning into AI. We have done a lot of applied AI in the past. Companies like Zest AI, which is a finance, they're an underwriting company for all the banking systems. Today, we're obviously seeing a ton in generative AI. We saw Apple's announcements and everything they're doing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity. There's also a lot of startups that won't exist after yesterday, I'm sure. For us, we think the future is going to be a couple of things in sort of building companies that will have sustainable value with this surge of AI. We don't invest in the foundational models, the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, getting multi-billion-dollar or double-digit billion-dollar valuations.
Yeah. So you think we're coming into a boom, a bust?
Oh, we're
AI?
certainly coming into a boom right now. There is a lot of froth in the market. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hype. There are a lot of people putting AI on their deck who have no place to be in AI. I wouldn't recommend founders do that, by the way. We see enough pitches that it's pretty clear within the first 30 seconds if you've got it or you don't.
Yeah. Okay, you guys all heard that, right?
Yeah.
Don't.
Drop the .ai if you're not AI. I spoke at an event last night, and this was the whole opening comment, and then the first 4 companies were .ai companies, and we felt so bad that we harped on this. But anyway,
no, listen, we got to give tough love too.
Yeah. And if you've got it, you should flaunt it. If you've got it, you should say it. But the human AI interface is something that we think about as being a major differentiator. So these big companies have been clear. OpenAI wants to build the greatest large language model for the world. They're not trying to solve every person or every business's finely tuned model. And so there are 2 things that come into this. One is data. So do you have a unique source of data or feedback loop? And the second one is design and interface. If I think about some of the best companies of the last generation moving into the cloud, they figured out how to embed in the workflow or the systems that you are already using every day in a way that was both meaningful and valuable, but it also felt natural. So this whole chat interface might be a natural way of doing it. But frankly, if you're a designer and you want AI tools in your design work, or you're a musician, I happen to be on the board of a company called Splice.
I thought you were going to say you play guitar.
No, I did play piano growing up, but my
cool
brother's
too.
a musician. Not as cool as being a guitarist, but
But you got cool shoes, so that.
there you go. Yeah. So in the world of arts or music, I'm going to place a bet that your best interface is not going to be typing into a text box, make me a song that sounds like this. You'd rather have an interface where you record, you strum your guitar into your phone, it listens as you're sitting in the studio with people. and it gives you recommendations from there. And so the actual interface and the meeting of a human decision-making or human creator and the AI is going to look vastly different in very different verticals. And so for us, we're leaning in very heavily to the fact that we need to focus on what is that unique insight that the founder has, because the rest of it's going to change rapidly. And we're seeing every day the core business, the core technology changing.
That's right. You are just dropping some really good nuggets for our listeners. Thank you. Thank you so much. Couple more questions for you. What are some do's and don'ts if people are trying to get in touch with you, get in touch with a firm? Like, what do you, like something you see and you just like cringe? Besides splashing AI over it.
Don't splash AI. I already said that one. No, I'd say a couple of things. One is I have a very open sort of view on the world. I host office hours, like open office hours. I take cold emails. Actually, one of my best performing companies, a founder that started a YouTube channel with his dad and emailed me. Now it's been probably 3 or 4 years ago, and said, I have this idea. I've never built a tech company before, but I have this awesome YouTube channel, and my dad's really cool too. You know what? He was right. His dad is cool.
I mean, he had hustle.
Yeah. And now this company is doing, in the last year, it's gone from about 2 million a year in revenue to almost 10 million today, and just really doing incredibly well. So I'd say I'm okay with people reaching out. I think there are two things. You know, there's a recommendation I make to founders. If they have the chance, they have a little bit of free time, which I know most don't, take an improv class. The entire goal when you're meeting with an investor the first time is to get to the next meeting, to get to the next conversation. This is also in sales.
Thank you for telling this.
So the term, the phrase yes and that you'll learn in improv is maybe the most important thing that you can do when you're in these pitches. So I would say don't get into a fight with me about something that I disagree. And it happens all the time. And the challenge is,
right? Is that not
the challenge is, this is a little bit like in politics, right? You're not going to sway my view of the world. I'm probably not going to sway yours that far if we're at opposite ends of the spectrum. So often I might say to a founder, you know, I just don't know if this is a big enough market to build a big enough business in this space.
Yeah.
I'd say 20 to 30% of the time, the founder gets combative and they're like, you're wrong. Like, well, now we're kind of at an impasse. Like in this 30-minute meeting, we're not going to, you're not going to convince me I was off by 10x, 100x. So instead, let's latch onto the things that we do agree on, and let's use those. And then eventually you can get me to understand, well, market may not be as big as I think, but you can get to 50% of the market. And so I think for me, that's a don't. And it sounds silly, but it happens a lot.
No,
it happens because founders are passionate. I want to be clear, like they believe what they're doing 110%. So I get why they come at this, but it's just in that first meeting, you got 30 minutes, you got 40 minutes, like that's not the place to spend your time. Yeah. There's a guy who asked me yesterday, I left a pitch event and he came with me out onto the street and he said, listen, like when I'm pitching you, like what's something I should think about doing if I'm going to pitch you my business? And I said, the truth is that for most of us, humans are pattern recognizers. This is how we make sure we don't like cross traffic when we shouldn't. It's what we do in venture capital too. And so I've generally kind of made up my mind within the first 5 minutes of the conversation. Like, is this interesting or not? And if it's not, you're probably not going to pull me over to interesting. If it is interesting, I'm probably going to take another meeting with you unless you get combative with me and we argue we don't get along. So one of the things I noted to the founder was take the chance to really pay attention to when the investor's sort of eyes light up. Like, it may not be the thing that you think is the most interesting. You know, I gave the example of Zach, this founder at a YouTube channel. I'm not a big YouTube person. I don't watch a lot of videos on the computer. Honestly, the thing that hooked me with Zach is he and his dad started this company, and his dad seems super interesting, really thoughtful in the automotive space. And it was really creative. And I just said, you know what? I want to meet with you and your dad. I just want to hear the story. I want to hear why you're doing it. Why are you so passionate about this thing that I never thought about before? It didn't matter what the business was in that moment. At some point, it's going to matter what the business is, but in the beginning, use that. And so just pay very close attention to where my eyes light up, or where I'm kind of not hearing it. You know, you show up with your 30-minute pitch, you're probably only getting like 3 minutes in before you go, wait a minute, that's the thing that's interesting to you? Let's dig into that.
Yeah, you know, I'm always saying to people, read the room, right?
Read the room.
Read the room, Timmy. And you're right, because sometimes they go into just like autopilot and they just go, right? And they turn on and it's like, you can't get a word into like that last page in the deck. And you're just like, wait, I had a question. Last point I want to touch on with you. We've been talking a lot about rejection. Obviously, we've had rejection whenever you're raising a fund, right? When you're raising a fund. How do you deal with rejection? Do you remember the last time you got zinged with some rejection?
Oh yeah, it's happened in the last couple of days. I've led the fundraising for our latest funds, and we probably have a total of about 40, 45 LPs, a couple large ones, a lot of individuals, and yet I'll speak to a couple hundred LPs during the flow. So you can do the math. I get rejected more than I get a yes. I think there's a couple of things I would note. One of them is, if people are being honest and thoughtful in the process, rejection hurts a lot less, because again, you go back to this read the room concept. You sort of know early on in the process. So it doesn't mean you should stop. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Doesn't mean you shouldn't see it out. But I think one of the things is just be prepared for it. Be prepared that more often than not, you're getting a no, and be mindful of what can you take away from that no. So often, I'll tell you, a lot of times people have a strategy that they've outlined for me in the very beginning of the conversation. But again, I'm not always perfect at reading the room either. So I hear them say all that and I say, that's great. Let me explain our fund to you. And at the end of it, they go, yeah, it's not a fit for us. And I'm like, I guess if I had really listened in the beginning, I would have known that. And so I think one of those things goes back to read the room, pay attention to it. I think on the flip side though, there's nothing great that's ever been built in the history of humankind that didn't start with a lot of rejection. Right. I don't care who you are. Go back to whether it was Galileo discovering this stuff, like figuring out how the world worked. Till now, I mean, Henry Ford got rejected a ton. Steve Jobs got rejected a ton. Steve Jobs was fired and then came back. It's like that's got to hurt a lot. And then it feels really good on the other side when you've built what is now one of the most valuable companies in the world. And so I think the rejection can lead to sort of bigger and better things. But at the end of the day, we're all in business. Like, we run what we call a venture capital business. Our investors expect us to make them money. That's right. Doesn't matter how good we are at doing our strategy, focusing on the things that we say we'll do. At the end of the day, they want us to make them money. And if I'm not sure it's going to make them money, I may have to say no.
It's a risky asset class, and we've got to mitigate that as much as possible. What size checks are you writing? Give people a sense. Is there
we tend to write sort of $1 to $3 million checks leading a seed round. That's typically kind of, you've already built a product, you have your founding team, you might have a little bit of revenue. We're certainly not looking for necessarily what they would call product market fit, but I am looking to see that you can actually do what you'd say you do. On the flip side, if it's an area where we have a lot of experience and expertise, or a founder we've gotten to know over a long time, we can go a little earlier. I'm doing a deal right now. A founder's got a memo and kind of 4 ideas. He's not really sure which one he's going to focus on. And so we'll do that pre-seed round, but it's got to be something where we have really strong conviction.
Yeah, I love it. We started by, in the intro, I said human AI interface. I think we should just change that and just call you like a good human.
I appreciate that. I think I am using AI more and more every day to do my own work, and as basically everybody in every vertical. I don't know if we're yet at a place where we want to let AI do the real communications, the human to human communications. I think we want to keep for a long time. But ultimately, my goal in doing this is that we're supporting the founders around us. And so it is a human thing. It's not.
You said at the beginning that you guys are about community, and I see it. I see you guys in the marketplace, and that truly is part of your brand. Jesse, thank you so much for being on the show today. Any final parting words? A good book, a good movie?
Yeah.
You want to leave us with?
Well, we talked about Tommy Boy. It's a great movie.
It's already on my list. That
people,
was if you're looking for me on Saturday, you're not going to find me.
You can watch that on your flight. I'd say, from a parting wisdom sort of thing for me right now, there has not been as great a time as today to go out on your own and build a company. The technology that has advanced in the last 18 months is just astounding. You can build 10 times more with one tenth the money. Yeah. And that means that if you're building something that uses technology, you can actually do it while you're working at your job, do it nights and weekends. When we started WeWork, one of the first programs we did, we called WeWork After Dark. That was a similar moment in time where it was an incredible moment to potentially leave your job and go build something. And our whole thing was, people want to work nights and weekends. They want to work on those side projects and hustle. And so go out and do it. The talent that's available is insane. It's amazing leaving every major company to build new things. The technology's made it a lot easier and cheaper. So that's like at this moment in time, I would just think about it. If you've had the idea, if you had the itch, do it. Why not? Great people. You can always get a job. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. On the book side, I will say that I am somebody, I read this book almost every year. Now it's about every 18 months just to remind myself of this lesson.
What?
But there's a book called Leadership and Self-Deception. And it is all about how we get into our own way when we wait like a second longer to react to something. We wind up building this crazy story in our heads. And it talks about how you can deal with personal life better, professional life. And so it's I think it's a great book. I've been reading it for like 15 years, almost every year. And I'm probably about due to read it again.
Oh, I love that. It sounds like there's a little bit of something in there that we talk a lot about, particularly women entrepreneurs, is this perfection paralysis that we get into, that it's got to be perfect before we put it out in the market, before we show it to anyone. So I'm going to go read that book.
They say perfect is the enemy of done, right? And I think it's
2 snaps to that.
Listen, and that perfection paralysis is a real thing. If you're an early stage startup founder, nothing you do will ever be perfect at that stage. And we don't expect it. Investors don't expect it. I tell founders that we expect only 10% of what you've promised us if you're an early stage founder. I mean, so I need to believe it's 10 times bigger than you think it is.
There you go. There you go. And listen, I mean, I'm going to age myself, but you would get software and then like 2 months later, you'd get like a patch, you know, for the bugs and stuff, right? Like, so we grew up just knowing like it's not going to be perfect. So,
exactly.
Yeah, we got to remember that. And we got to give ourselves some grace.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you some grace and some thanks for being here. And I'm going to kick you out so you can go back to writing checks and working with entrepreneurs. Thank you.
This episode of VCs Off the Record is brought to you by Wocstar Ghetto Film School Entrepreneurial Academy.
You see why I wanted him on the show, right?
Yeah, he's amazing. And his shoes were amazing. I took a photograph. I'm going to go to the store and buy those sneakers. Okay, so
I got to up my shoe game.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I wrote this down because when he said it, so I loved it when he talked about 2 things. When he talked about don't fight with the VC, I thought clear. But, you get defensive. You get defensive, especially when you love your thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's defensive / passionate.
Yeah.
And so some people may not recognize that they're being defensive. They're thinking they're being passionate.
Yeah. I think that's a really, it's about self-awareness too. Like, right?
Read the room, Timmy.
Right. But it's hard. Like, and you and I will always have conversations where I'll go, I sense the tone shift. I sense the thing. Like, I'm very in tune with people's energy like that.
Well, I don't have a poker face either, right? So
yeah, well,
that helps when I'm out. When I check out, I'm out.
Yeah, you know. Yeah. And also when he said take an improv class.
What?
I was like, he's like, for the yes and. It's like, that's gold. That's a really good piece of advice.
Oh my God, should we take one?
No. That was not a silent no. All right. Maybe. How about that?
Maybe there's like a 1-day one.
All right. Secret.
There's like
I took one once.
There's like sip and paint classes. Maybe there's like a half-day one.
I think I'd rather take the improv than the sip and paint.
Oh, I would never do the sip and paint.
But you tell me your final thoughts.
Okay. So my final thoughts are rejection is just the nature of what we do.
Yeah.
And so I hope people really took that to heart and like be okay with no's, like get comfortable with the no. That was one. And then I loved how he talked about the powerful technology that exists today and how you can build anything because you've got so much technological advancement and innovation right now that should not stop or limit anyone. And I love that he said that. And I hope people really stew in that and not let perfection paralysis impede their growth and their dreams and their build out of their companies.
Yeah.
So, I actually took that in for myself. Like that was a lesson that seeped into my soul too.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for watching. Stay tuned. We've got some great guests coming up over the season and more off the record conversation to be had. Stay fabulous.
Thanks for hanging with us. This podcast was produced by Wocstar Media in New York City at the Podstream Studios. Be sure to follow VCs Off the Record on Apple and Spotify. We're also on Sheconomy, the State of Women podcast platform. Please consider giving us a good review or share it with someone. Let us know what you want us to talk about on our socials and our YouTube channel. You can find us at wocstar.com for all the information.